You like teenage girls. When you say teenage, how old are we talking?
And have you done anything wrong?
Lots of things wrong.
Audio Jungle. Against her will.
We went from seeing you or talking to you daily or weekly to not seeing you in 2 years.
Kelly was physically and emotionally abusive. We were required to call him daddy.
You're killing me, man! This is not about music!
Hi friends, how are you guys today? I hope you guys are all having such an amazing day today. If you guys are not having an amazing day, I really hope your day gets better from here on out. I want to start this video like every other video and say thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it, and it really does mean a lot to me. I really hope that you enjoy this video, but if you don't enjoy it, I hope you at least give it a chance. But if you guys are returning to this channel, thank you guys so much for returning to my channel. It means so much to me, and I appreciate it so much. So today we are going to talk about R. Kelly and his trial and everything going on with him, because I really think that we need to talk about it. I've went through all the court documents and I've read everything, and I've looked for videos about it, and no one's really talking about it, and I think we really need to talk about this. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay guys, so I want to start this off as for when R. Kelly got arrested. I actually did another video. Well, I didn't do it yet, but I wrote out notes and did a bunch of research for another video on R. Kelly that's everything that he's done. But this first video, I really want to focus on his trial, because his trial just started August 18th, and I think that we should really talk about it. So let's go ahead, and on this video we will stick to everything that's going on with him right now, and then I'll do another deep dive into everything in a later video. But I want to start with on January 3rd in 2019, there was a 6-hour documentary series called Surviving R. Kelly that premiered. It premiered in New York City, and it was January 3rd. I think it was a 3-night premiere because it's 6 hours long. But in that documentary, you guys, if you haven't seen it, you can see it on Netflix. It is on Netflix. That's where I found it. If you haven't seen it, I would watch it. It is really disturbing. But during the premiere of this documentary series, there was a threat called in to the premiere, and the threat was on a woman named Tamara Burke's life. Now, Tamara Burke is the founder of the Me Too movement, and she's also responsible for starting the Mute R. Kelly movement. So there was hashtag Mute R. Kelly movement. Say that 3 times fast, you guys. Mute R. Kelly movement, and it was calling out all the record companies and all of the venues and everybody who was still working with R. Kelly after 24 years of allegations against him. And after this movement, they all the venues started canceling his shows, and then his record company actually got dropped him and stuff like that. So it did work, but at the call-in of the threat, R. Kelly's former manager, Donnell Russell, he has been charged with calling in that threat and making that threat on her life. I don't know what's happened, but he has been charged with that. So anyway, after the pressure from the Mute R. Kelly movement, the RCA Records and their parent company, Sony Records, they both decided to cut ties with They decided to cut ties with R. Kelly, and they did drop him from their label, but they never actually acknowledged it or released a statement or anything. They just dropped him and acted like they never even knew him. They didn't have a statement or anything. But in 2019, R. Kelly was arrested on federal charges. He faces 2 sets of federal charges in New York City and then another set of federal charges in Chicago as well. So in Chicago, he faces 10 counts of aggravated sexual abuse involving 4 women, 3 of which were minors at the time. He was released on bail in Chicago. And 3 months later, he was charged with an additional 11 sexual offenses, including sexual assault and abuse of a minor and obstruction of justice as well. The charges for Chicago right now stand at 13, including child pornography as well. So they must have dropped a few of them because there was 10 and then 11, so that's 21, but they must have dropped a few of them because there's only 13 right now. A federal grand jury in Brooklyn, New York, indicted R. Kelly, whose legal name is Robert Sylvester Kelly. They indicted him in July of 2019. His charges in New York City include racketeering, and he faces racketeering charges for alleged sexual exploitation of children, kidnapping, forced labor, transportation of women and girls across state lines for illegal sexual activity. He's charged with sex trafficking and running a criminal enterprise made up of managers, bodyguards, and other employees who would, quote, seek out girls at concerts and other venues or locations like that. Many of the girls were underage at the time, and they would recruit these girls, and they would arrange for the girls to travel out of state or wherever to meet up with R. Kelly and have sex with him. And then after that, R. Kelly would isolate and abuse these girls to keep him under his control. He was denied bail in New York City, and he has been in custody since 2019. I swear, I don't see how this is not like bigger news. Like, nobody really knows about this. It's not out there a lot. You have to actually go searching for it, but he's actually been in custody for 2 years. They denied him bail, and he has not been let out at all. He's mostly been kept in federal prison in Chicago, but last month he was transported to Brooklyn to stand trial in New York City. All of the charges in Chicago are on hold until his New York trial is over. So if he gets acquitted of all charges in New York City, he will have to go to Chicago and face trial again. If he is found guilty, he will still have to go to Chicago and face trial again. The jury selection actually started about 2 weeks ago, and the trial opening statements were on Wednesday, August 18th. Okay, so the prosecution is going to be presenting evidence that R. Kelly orchestrated hush payments to a lot of people. He employed a street system of discipline and psychological manipulation over victims that in some cases span over years, according to the court records. Prosecution plans on presenting 19 women and at least 7 who were minors at the time of the allegations of misconduct, as well as the Jane Doe, who was 17 at the time of his allegations as well. So 8 of them total were minors at the time of their allegations. According to the indictment, it was standard practice for his entourage to issue wristbands to girls, some of them minors, who were attending his concerts. And these wristbands would allow these girls full backstage access and direct interaction with R. Kelly. Then he would identify the girls that he liked and that he wanted to see again, and he would ask for her contact information, or a direct associate of his would obtain the contact information from the girl for R. Kelly. The girls were then offered to meet with R. Kelly again at future shows, and he would also provide transportation and lodging for these girls if they would go to future shows and meet with him again. Now, R. Kelly had rules for his girls. This was like a big thing in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary that they made. He made all of his girls call him daddy. They were not allowed to leave the room unless he allowed them to leave the room, even if they had to go to the bathroom, if they had to eat. If they were hungry, they were not allowed to leave the room at all unless R. Kelly instructed them to do so. A lot of the girls, I guess it said in the documentary, a lot of the girls were in a dark room for days and starved for days, and they had a bucket in the corner of the room that they had to go to the bathroom in because they were not allowed to leave the room or go to the bathroom without his permission. So they would have a bucket in that room. And that is disgusting. I don't understand why someone would want to do something like that. He is just so foul and gross. But many of the victims alleged that they were also filmed by him performing sexual acts. Many say that they were slapped, hit, or otherwise physically assaulted, and some of them were told on film to look at the floor. That's another thing in the documentary series that they did, where a lot of the girls were told that they were not allowed to talk to any other males or pretty much anybody without his permission, and if someone spoke to them, they would have to not reply at all and look at the floor. What? If somebody... Anyway, the prosecution also plans to prove that R. Kelly knowingly passed herpes to some of his victims. And this is going to be easily provable with his medical records that have been leaked before. His medical records have actually been leaked before. And they do show that he does, in fact, have herpes, and he did pass it on to Jane Doe's 4 and 5 in particular. It is also in the indictment about R. Kelly and his manager, Demetrius Smith, bribing the Clark County official to forge a marriage license for Aaliyah in 1994. The marriage license said that she was 18, but we all know that she was actually only 15 at the time of their marriage when they got married in August. I think it was August 31st, 1994. It's so sad that Aaliyah she is just such a beautiful woman and has this amazing legacy, and everybody just loves her so much, and I hate that a part of her legacy has to include this piece of shit. Mind my French, excuse me. But there's a lot in the indictment about bribery, and one of them was about R. Kelly giving $2,500 and a burner phone to a Cook County clerk official, again in Chicago, and this county official was supposed to tip R. Kelly off about his legal troubles. Well, they recovered a recording of the phone call of R. Kelly bribing this clerk official, and they also did a search of R. Kelly's phone, and they easily found that recording on his phone, which is hilarious to me. He bribed this county official and gave the county official a burner phone to contact him so that nobody could trace it, but yet he didn't use a burner phone. He used his real phone. Smart. So I thought that was hilarious. What an idiot. Okay, so let's talk about who is going to testify in this trial. A woman named Kitty Jones is going to be testifying. Now, she met R. Kelly at a mall in 2003 when she was in her early 20s, and she was working at a radio station as an intern. Well, she was invited to interview R. Kelly at his home, and when she got there, she was forced to sign an NDA and then was locked into a room without any substances for 3 days. She was without any food or drink or anything for 3 days. She was locked in a room for 3 days straight. And a member of R. Kelly's entourage eventually came in after the 3rd day and gave her something to drink. She became dizzy and passed out, according to the indictment. And, quote, she woke up sometime thereafter with Robert with her in the bedroom in circumstances that made it appear that he had sexually assaulted her when she was unconscious, end quote. This is from the paperwork from the prosecution. London Mack's mother is also set to testify. London is not testifying, but her mother will be testifying. She is among several of the parents of R. Kelly's inner circle. She will testify about the mind control R. Kelly exerts over the women who stay at his residences. According to the women, R. Kelly controls every single aspect of their life, dictating when they can eat, how they can dress, when they can bathe, what they wear, when they sleep, how they engage in sexual encounters, which he records, who they can speak to, everything like that. So let's go ahead and talk about a text message. There is a text message from May 17th, 2016, and this text message is from an employee of R. Kelly's entourage. The text message reads, quote, "Something is really strange about the treatment and behavior of the little one. When she gets to Florida, she needs to run and never look back. She should be living the fun life of an 18-year-old high school senior, but she's been on punishment for forever," end quote. So that shows in that text message from 2016 that employees of R. Kelly's little entourage criminal enterprise thing, employees of his were suspecting like something weird, at least, something weird is going on with the treatment of the little one, or probably a lot of them. But they were just able to get this particular text message. But yeah, so either they knew, all the employees knew exactly what was going on, or some of them knew and some of them were just kind of kept in the dark, and they kind of thought something weird was going on but didn't really think too much about it or didn't ask. I personally think that they probably all mostly knew, at least a roundabout way, what the hell was going on. But R. Kelly's defense. So he changed counsel in June after 2 years. He was arrested in 2019. His trial was supposed to start in August, which it did start in August here last week. But he changed his defense counsel in June, 2 months before the trial. June, July, August. Yeah, 2 months before the trial. But he was incarcerated for 2 years. He had this lawyer team for 2 years, and he just decides to change entire attorney teams 2 months before the trial. So that is a big deal, and that's a big trial for his new attorneys to take on in just 2 months. So they definitely had their work cut out for them. But according to a lot of R. Kelly's supporters out there, R. Kelly now has diabetes, and he did not have diabetes prior to him being arrested and incarcerated. So a lot of his supporters are blaming the government and his treatment in there, and the food that they were giving him in there as his cause of diabetes, saying that it's basically poor food in the prison, and it is what made him sick and have this disease. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if R. Kelly is going to end up trying to sue the government for him getting diabetes or something. I have no idea. But pretty much he got diabetes in prison. And when I think about it, I'm like, so they gave you shitty food. Well, at least they let you eat every day, right, guys? I mean, he didn't let any of these girls ever eat, so at least you get to eat every day. R. Kelly's attorneys plan to introduce and provide evidence that the Jane Doe's number 1, 4, and 5's parents knew or should have known about their respected sexual relationships, therefore gave their approval. So R. Kelly's attorneys plan to introduce evidence showing that Jane Doe's numbers 1, 4, and 5, their parents either knew or should have known about their sexual relationships, because it's obvious, or it was obvious, I guess, and they obviously gave their approval, or made it seem like to R. Kelly that they gave their approval. I don't know, but in the documents I was able to find Jane Doe number 1 is Aaliyah. Jane Doe number 4 is Jerhonda Pace, and she was 17 years old. Aaliyah was 15, by the way. And Jane Doe number 5 was Azriel Clary, and she was 16 years old. So all of these 3 Jane Does were under 18 when he was having sex with them, and just because he says that their parents should have known, doesn't mean that it's okay with the law. That's ridiculous. So I don't know what kind of defense that is, but whatever. But R. Kelly is planning on presenting evidence showing that the parents knew about their sexual relationships between him and their daughters, and they were trying to extort money from R. Kelly because of his relationship with their daughters as well. Now, the prosecution wants R. Kelly and his lawyers to be prohibited from introducing any evidence of schemes by the parents of the victims to profit or extort money from R. Kelly on account with his relationships with their daughters. Now, when I think about that, I think, yeah, R. Kelly is a piece of shit, but is that really fair? In an American trial where you're allowed to have a defense, is that really fair that the prosecution knows that he has evidence, that R. Kelly supposedly has evidence against these girls' parents, showing that they were scheming him and trying to extort money, and they knew of the sexual relationship between him and their daughters? So if he has evidence to show that, I think it should be presented. I mean, I understand why they don't want the evidence presented, but would that really be fair? And would that maybe be grounds for an appeal after the verdict if they didn't allow him to show his evidence in his defense? I don't know. Okay, so fun fact, John Doe number 1 claims that he had access to a juror in R. Kelly's original trial in 2008. And I guess Kelly told him to go ahead and contact this juror and tell him that R. Kelly was a good guy. Now, I don't know if John Doe number 1 did in fact contact this juror in 2008 trial, but he was acquitted of all charges, so he probably did. I don't know. But I'm also not sure if he's going to include that in his testimony when he testifies, John Doe number 1. I don't know. That would be interesting. Let's go ahead and look into the some of the court documents that I was able to get my hands on for you guys. Alright, so like I told you guys, Jane Doe number 1 is Aaliyah. Now, you might be thinking, how are they dragging up something from 1994 in this trial? Well, that is why them charging him with racketeering was such a good legal maneuver, and I think it's more of a tactic maybe, because when you charge somebody with racketeering, RICO charges are normally reserved for mob bosses and stuff like that, but when you charge, they're now learning that they can kind of use it for other things. And when you charge somebody with racketeering, you can actually bring in all of their prior bad acts almost to kind of explain the whole overall criminal enterprise thing. So they're able to go back way far back as long as they want to, I think, and bring up every little thing that he's done wrong to prove that he's got a whole criminal enterprise going. And even when he sleeps, his entourage of employees is taking care of all this stuff for him so he doesn't have to worry. That is the point of the racketeering charges, and I think it's a good legal maneuver that they did to be able to talk about all kinds of other stuff too. But everything with Aaliyah is going to be in this trial. It sucks for her. Rest her soul. I love Aaliyah, but I know they're trying to use it to convict this man, and he needs to be convicted. So let's go ahead and let me show you this document right here, alleged racketeering acts. The indictment alleges racketeering acts related to 6 women identified as Jane Doe number 1 through Jane Doe number 6 in the indictment. The alleged conduct is described below. A bribery related to Jane Doe number 1. Now, this was when R. Kelly married Aaliyah in 1994, and she was only 15 years old, and he actually, him and his manager got a Cook County employee to forge the marriage license saying that Aaliyah was 18. So, racketeering acts 1 alleges that R. Kelly together with others engaged in bribery in violation of the Illinois law. In or about 1994, Kelly caused an enterprise member to pay $500 to get a state employee to create a state identification card for Jane Doe number 1, who is Aaliyah, then 15 years old, so that Kelly and Jane Doe number 1 could get married and Jane Doe number 1 could not be forced to testify against him given the spousal privilege. Records from Cook County in Illinois show that on August 30th, 1994, an application was granted for Kelly and Jane Doe number 1 to be married, and that they were in fact married on August 31st, 1994. The marriage application and record, marriage license, and certification of marriage all state that Jane Doe number 1 was 18 at the time, when in fact she was actually only 15 years old. It says in this court document, overview of the government's evidence of the defendant's other acts. So because they're charging him with racketeering, they can bring in all these other acts as well. Sexual abuse of Jane Doe number 1, a minor. As described above, Kelly is charged in Racketeering Act 1 with bribery of a state employee to create an identification card for Aaliyah, then 15 years old, so that Kelly and Aaliyah could get married and Aaliyah could not be forced to testify against him. The government seeks to introduce evidence regarding R. Kelly's sexual abuse of Aaliyah to prove his motive for engaging in this racketeering act. Now, I am really surprised by this claim from the prosecution. They are claiming that they literally have evidence that R. Kelly and Aaliyah were engaging in a sexual relationship. There was never any kind of evidence before. It was always just hearsay and people thought maybe, but they're claiming they have actual evidence that they're going to present at this trial. So I am very, very curious to see what that's going to be. When Kelly met Aaliyah, she was a minor and the niece of his manager at the time. At the time, Aaliyah was a promising young singer, and R. Kelly's thereafter began to write and produce music for Aaliyah. While Aaliyah was still a minor, R. Kelly began a sexual relationship with her, and in August of '94, when Aaliyah was 15 years old, R. Kelly believed that Aaliyah had become pregnant. As a result, in an effort to shield himself from criminal charges related to his illegal sexual relationship with Aaliyah, R. Kelly arranged to secretly marry her to prevent her from being compelled to testify against him in the future. Given Jane Doe number 1's age, the bribery charged in Racketeering Act 1 was necessary to effectuate this marriage. Let's talk about Jane Doe number 5, child porn for R. Kelly. So Jane Doe number 5 was Azriel Clary, and she claims that R. Kelly instructed her to obtain child pornography for him, and she is going to testify to this. So this right here says Jane Doe number 5 is expected to testify that during the course of her relationship with R. Kelly, Kelly directed her to obtain child pornography involving boys for him. At Kelly's direction, Jane Doe number 5 searched the internet for pornography involving younger looking males and screen recorded such pornography for Kelly's use. Jane Doe number 5 believed the pornography that she found on the internet and downloaded for Kelly actually involved individuals who were 18 or older, given the websites on which she found the videos on. A judicially authorized search of digital media recovered from Kelly's residence corroborates Jane Doe number 5's account. The following videos were recorded from the device. I don't know. You guys can read that. Okay, now let's talk about Jane Doe number 7. I got this document here that is sexual abuse of Jane Doe number 7, a minor. In or about 1991, when she was approximately 15 years old, Jane Doe number 7, an individual whose identity is known to the government, met Kelly at his apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Jane Doe number 7 had been invited by a female acquaintance who was also a minor to come to R. Kelly's apartment with her. 2 other minor females also came to the apartment with them. So it was 4 minor females. While at the apartment, Kelly initiated and engaged in sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 7, and Jane Doe number 7 also saw Kelly engaged in sexual encounters with other minors while she was at Kelly's apartment. Jane Doe number 7 later became employed by Kelly as, among other things, a backup dancer. During the course of her time with Kelly, Jane Doe number 7 observed Kelly. She observed Kelly engage in sexual contact with Jane Doe number 1, who was Aaliyah, a minor. So she is saying that she was a minor when she started having a sexual relationship with R. Kelly in 1991. Then she became a backup dancer, and in later on, a few years later, in 1994, she saw R. Kelly having sex with Aaliyah when she was a minor. Jane Doe number 7, what is her name? I forget her name. I will put it right here. It's in my notes. Where are my notes? Okay, so this document talks about abuse of Jane Doe number 8, who was also a minor. In or about September 1994, Jane Doe number 8, a 17-year-old girl, and an individual whose identity is known to the government, attends a concert in Florida. At this concert in Florida is where R. Kelly performed. After the concert, members of the Enterprise, his entourage, directed Jane Doe number 8 and a friend of hers to go backstage to meet R. Kelly, and Jane Doe number 8 obtained Kelly's autograph. While Jane Doe number 8 was backstage, Kelly, who was not wearing a condom, penetrated her through the front with his privates. That's weird. In violation of Florida law. Okay, so let's just say he had sex with her. I don't understand. Okay. A pamphlet signed by Kelly containing a reference to Jane Doe number 8 and a room number corroborates Jane Doe number 8's encounter with Kelly. And here is abuse of Jane Doe number 9. She is also a minor. In or about 1995, Kelly met Jane Doe number 9, a 17-year-old girl, and an individual who is known to the government at the Florida Mall, and thereafter commenced a sexual relationship with her in violation of Florida law. On one occasion, Jane Doe number 9 laughed at a joke by one of R. Kelly's associates, and Kelly immediately summoned her outside and slapped her across the face for having done so, for laughing at a joke, which is, I guess, not allowed. During their relationship, Jane Doe number 9 contracted herpes and disclosed her diagnosis to Kelly, who did not admit to giving her herpes. At the time of her diagnosis, Jane Doe number 9 was only sexually active with R. Kelly, which I believe because it was like 1994 and she was 17. I mean, I know like nowadays, almost 30 years later, it's pretty common for a 17-year-old to be sexually active, but back in 94, it wasn't that common at all. Okay, unlawful imprisonment of Jane Doe number 14. In 2008, Kelly met Jane Doe number 14, a woman in her 20s whose identity is known to the government, and arranged for her to travel to Kelly's residence in Chicago, Illinois, where they began a sexual relationship. During her last trip to Chicago to see Kelly, she was left in a room for a long period of time, and she became worried. She told a member of the Enterprise, an individual on Kelly's security team, that she wanted to leave, and that individual said that they would figure it out, but did not allow her to leave just then. The following morning, she overheard Kelly yelling and sounds of a physical assault. Jane Doe number 14 again contacted Kelly's security team, but this time said that she was going to call the police if not permitted to leave. Only then did a member of Kelly's security team come to the room where she was staying, escort her out of the room, and take her to the airport. I don't know if they paid for her flight home, but they escorted her back to the airport, which, that is weird. Why would you, that's just, I don't know. Okay, this document is the physical and psychological abuse of Jane Doe number 18. In or about 2016, Jane Doe number 18, whose identity is known to the government, met Kelly at one of his concerts while she was approximately 20 years old after one of Kelly's associates approached her and told Jane Doe number 18 that Kelly wanted to meet her. In or about 2016, Jane Doe number 18 started a sexual relationship with Kelly. Kelly regularly punished Jane Doe number 18 in various ways when she violated his rules. For example, Kelly violently spanked, hit, and kicked Jane Doe number 18 on multiple occasions. At times, Kelly also instructed Jane Doe number 18 to text Kelly that she liked being spanked after administering the spankings and punishment. In addition to the spankings, I can't believe they're saying spankings. I'm sorry. In addition to the spankings, Kelly ordered Jane Doe number 18 to walk back and forth in high heels for long stretches of time, repeating as she walked what he deemed she had done wrong as punishment. Okay, so if he deemed that she did something wrong, he forced her to walk back and forth in high heels for a long period of time, reciting over and over what she did wrong. At a concert in November 2017, Kelly became enraged with Jane Doe number 18 because he suspected she had been communicating with another man and grabbed Jane Doe number 18 and broke her necklace, cutting her neck. Kelly then made her go back to the hotel where she was staying and write a note stating that she had attacked Kelly. He sounds pretty smart. So he attacked her where she got a mark, and he was probably like, oh shit, she has a mark. So he forced her to write a note stating that she attacked him in case she tried to go to the police. So he would be like, I have a note right here where she stated she attacked me first. Pretty smart. Kelly dictated to her what he wanted her to write in the note. When she finished that note, Kelly directed Jane Doe 18 to give him the note for future use. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about John Doe number 1 and 2. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but recently it came out that R. Kelly was not only into young teenage girls, he was also into young teenage boys as well, and he met one at a McDonald's and took him back to the studio and like forced him to do sexual things with him, and then forced him to do sexual things on camera with others, and then he also forced him to introduce him to one of his friends, which is John Doe number 2. And yeah, so let's read this document. In or about December 2006, Kelly met John Doe number 1, a 17-year-old boy, and an individual whose identity is known to the government, at a local McDonald's, and invited him to attend a party at his residence in Chicago, Illinois. John Doe number 1, along with his mother and stepfather, attended the party. When Kelly saw John Doe number 1 with his family members, Kelly advised him to come without them to the next gathering. Thereafter, Kelly invited John Doe number 1 into his studio under the guise of helping and mentoring John Doe number 1 with his musical aspirations. Kelly also asked John Doe number 1 what he was willing to do to succeed in the music business, and clarified that he wanted John Doe number 1 to engage in sexual contact with Kelly. With that backdrop, Kelly then engaged in sexual contact with John Doe number 1 in violation of Illinois law. John Doe number 1 thereafter introduced Kelly to, among others, John Doe number 2, a close male friend who was then 16 or 17 years old and whose identity is known to the government. And Kelly sought to establish a sexual relationship with John Doe number 2. Several years later, Kelly started a sexual relationship with John Doe number 2 and required his girlfriends, including Jane Doe number 5, to have sex with John Doe number 2 upon his command, and often filmed those encounters. Kelly sometimes paid John Doe number 2 after sexual encounters with him. Kelly also directed John Doe number 1 and others to engage in sexual contact with each other and filmed those encounters. Telephone records corroborate Kelly's relationship with John Doe number 1 and John Doe number 2, beginning when they were both 17 years old. John Doe number 1 also introduced Kelly to his girlfriends of John Doe number 1. Okay, so John Doe number 1 also introduced Kelly to his girlfriends. Okay, so here is the preliminary statement. It says the government respectfully submits this memorandum in support of its motion in Limelight to admit at trial evidence of certain acts by the defendant Robert Kelly. Specifically, the government seeks to admit evidence of uncharged sexual abuse of minors, unlawful imprisonment, hush payments, use of physical and psychological harm to obtain sexual and other services, threatening conduct, physical abuse, and bribery. As demonstrated below, the evidence of these acts is admissible as evidence of the uncharged racketeering offense. Smart. In addition, certain of the evidence of these other acts is directly relevant and inextricably intertwined with the evidence of the uncharged crimes. In the alternative, evidence of these other acts is also admissible under Rules 404B and 413 of the Federal Rules of Evidence. That is everything that I got in the whole 55-page indictment. I got a good chunk of it, but I couldn't get all of it. But it definitely would have taken a long time to go through all of it anyway, I'm sure. But I'm sure now you guys have a pretty good idea of what he is charged with, why he's charged with that, everything they're tying into this trial, and why it's so important. He has literally had allegations like this for 30 years, and he's never been caught, ever. He had trial one time and he was acquitted, but he's never been caught. Now, I don't know if this will work. I'm pretty sure it'll work and he won't ever see the light of day again, and he will probably be locked up forever. But, I mean, crazy stuff happens all the time in our justice system. I don't know what'll happen. So what do you guys think about all of this? What do you think about R. Kelly, and do you like R. Kelly? Do you like his music? It's crazy to me that the guy who wrote I Believe I Can Fly, that inspirational, amazing song, does this stuff. Honestly, I do know that R. Kelly was molested as a child by a family member, and in the docuseries that was corroborated by his brother. His brother said he was also molested as well. And I know that when you're molested when you're younger and you don't get help and you don't get therapy, it can really, really mess you up. And a lot of those victims take that psychological abuse and they want to flip it, and they want to be like, I want to be the abuser. I never want to be in that vulnerable situation. I want to be the one who's always in power, and then they turn into the abuser. I mean, it happens a lot, but that's still no excuse. He's an adult. He knows it's wrong. I want to hear everything you guys think. Your thoughts, your opinions, everything that you think. I respect and love everything that you guys think about everything that we talk about on this channel. So I would love to hear your comments down below, as well as your comments will also help push this video through the YouTube algorithm, because no one is talking about this trial and it's so weird to me. But anyway, guys, that is everything. I am going to do another video into like a deep dive into his life and everything that he has done. So let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in as well. I also have some other projects lined up for you guys that I hope you'll enjoy as well. So that is everything, you guys, and I will see you in the next video. And in a world where you can be anything, you guys, please be kind to each other. Bye, guys.